Hi, John Wavra here, safe and sound in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm going to tell you a story about an event that happened over 50 years ago. It is a story you probably have never heard before. It is a true story, and it happened in a place called Quan Loy. This is not a happy story. It is a story that will test your tenacity to complete. It is a story which exhibits one's destiny or fate. You, the viewer, must first understand the surrounding circumstances which led to this incident. So let me share them with you. The incident took place on the perimeter of a U.S. Army base camp located 60 miles north of Saigon. The place was called Quan Loy due to a small mountain yard village by the same name, but also known as LZ Andy and Rocket City. However, Quan Loy was also the name of the central rubber plantation of the French Terre Rouge rubber plantation. It had been the area headquarters for the 1st Brigade, 1st Infantry Division, and at this time the area headquarters for the 1st Battalion, 1st Cavalry Division, and just recently the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment. It was the night of August 19th, 1969, during the Vietnam War. Quan Loi was located 5 kilometers northeast of An Loc, the provincial capital of Bin Long Province. Throughout the months of July and August of 1969, there had been reports of a lot of enemy activity in the surrounding area. During the daytime, the Viet Cong indiscriminately lobbed mortar shells and directed rocket rounds into Quan Loi Base Camp. The Viet Cong, or VC, tried their best to aim for the airstrip that ran down the center of the base camp in the hope that they might hit a helicopter or a C-130 or a Caribou aircraft. It was stretching luck to the utmost because their mortars and rockets were not that accurate, but it was harassment type firing. However, sometimes they scored a hit, like in November of 1969 when they lucked out and hit the Quan Loy Queen, a C-130 Hercules, on the airstrip. If you happen to be somewhere where the mortar or rocket landed, your tour of duty in Vietnam was over. Need to know reports of enemy activity in the area were almost an everyday occurrence, and some firefight contact had been made with scouting parties from the 1st Cavalry Division. The Tet attacks of 1968 were stuck in the minds of the old-timers who were at Quan Loy back then. Recent ground attacks by VC or NVA troops on the base camp during the past months were easily remembered. On May 12, 1969, at 1 o'clock in the morning, a number of Viet Cong troops cut the perimeter barbed wire and entered the camp. 5 VC were killed within the perimeter wire. A rocket attack had sent several GIs to hospitals down south. On a personal note, I arrived at Quan Loy on May 20th, and the May 12th attack was still being talked about. In fact, I ended up replacing one of the company clerks who had been hit by a rocket during that attack. I volunteered that I could type, and it was the best decision I ever made during my Vietnam tour of duty. This same night, Bravo Battery in Locked In sustained a ground attack with 28 VC killed in the perimeter wire and 2 VC surrendering. Something was going on. The enemy was planning some type of operation, and it included Quan Loi Base Camp. Again, on the night of June 5th, Quan Loi came under a heavy mortar and RPG attack, followed by a ground attack with 10 NVA killed short of the battery's wire and 4 NVA wounded and taken prisoner. The regulars at Quan Loi were beginning to get a little worried. Rumors spread that there might be future large NVA attack aimed at Quan Loi. Headquarters Battery lost one of its own when Robert Brubaker was killed. Let me share with you some memories of the May 12, 1969 ground attack of Quan Loi. First, from the late Gary Graham. He remembered May 12th. Gary, let me tell you, was from Oklahoma, and I won't begin to try to use his accent.
Boom, 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 boom. I awake in a fright. I check my wristwatch. The time is 0130 hours. The impacts are almost continuous along with small arms fire. My first thought is ground attack. I dress in record time only to realize that my rifle, flak jacket, steel pod, and ammo are all on a hook in the FDC bunker. The one thing that is very apparent to me was that Quan Loy was receiving a heavy ground attack along the entire length of the perimeter of the base. Person. They just knocked out the guard tower on the perimeter over by number 4. Person. Goddamn. Person. We're in some deep shit tonight. Person. Get the 105s at Thunder 4 to shoot the DEFCONs on our sector of the perimeter. Person. Thunder 4 says they won't shoot them because they are in a no-fire zone. Person. Tell them to shoot the motherfuckers anyway. I peer outside and get my first good look at what is happening. A pall of smoke is hanging low. I can see shadowy figures running everywhere. The illumination dies, and it is pitch black except for the light from a few flashlights and incoming ordnance impacts. The sound of small arms fire and mortar and rocket impacts is almost constant. I see a flash and an RPG is fired at the battery. An officer runs to FDC bunker. He yells, "The VC are coming through the wire. Let's go." I follow him to the perimeter. After what seems like an hour, we arrive at the interior wire of the battery, and I am placed in a bunker in close proximity to number 4 gun pad. I am the only person inside it. Just as I get in the bunker, number 4 gun is knocked out by an RPG. I see the flash. I hear no sound. Then I hear yelling and screaming from the vicinity of the gun pad. Small arms fire, and incoming ordnance goes from constant to sporadic for the next several hours. I maintain my position on the interior perimeter. I continue to see shadowy figures in the illumination, but they are headed toward the green line perimeter. About 0700, an officer comes by my position and says, "It's all over." I go back to FDC to do my regular shift. Chow is ready at 0800 hours. I go eat breakfast, but it has no taste. I have lived to fight another day. I have never been the same after that night.
Roger Mallory with Headquarters Battery remembered May 12th. At midnight, the first rockets came in, and as usual, I was up and moving before the sound of the first rocket faded. When I got outside of the bunker, I knew something was different because the perimeter was alive with small arms fire. There were explosions I didn't recognize, and I could see the guard tower burning. I made my way to the RTT area where I was supposed to go and waited for instructions. I remember the night sky was filled with Huey gunships and Cobras. Both were firing their miniguns and rockets. Puff was there, but because they were already inside the wire, the only thing he could do is drop flares. I thought that night would never end, but like all nights do, it finally did end with a sunrise. The late Norm Wolfinger was there at Quan Loy on the night of May 12, 1969. He was wounded that night from shrapnel, and it was his ticket home, but he suffered the rest of his life from those wounds. He recorded the sounds of the ground attack that night. Here is just a sample of that recording with added photos of both Headquarters and Alpha Battery. The rest of his video is available on www.quanloy.org.
Hi, I'm Norm Wolfinger. I served with Headquarters Battery and later with A Battery, the 6th to the 27th Artillery in Quan Loy, Vietnam from September 1968 through May 13th, 1969. The tape recording that you're about to hear is a tape that I made during the early morning hours of May 12th, 1969, when our base camp at Quan Loy was under attack, a very heavy attack. Me and two of my friends were off duty on the night of May 11th and were sleeping in the admin bunker in A Battery, when shortly before 2 o'clock we were awakened by a loud, violent barrage of rockets and mortars raining in on our base. We immediately grabbed our weapons, and as we went outside, were met by, I believe it was a sergeant major who would run by indicating that the VC had penetrated the wire and we're in the compound and we should be on guard in that area to secure that area and also look over the airstrip adjacent to us. I took a position by the admin bunker in A battery, and for whatever reason my tape recorder was there and I turned it on, and that's the tape that you're going to hear. The photographs that are accompanying the tape were taken in the weeks or perhaps a month or so prior to this night, so they're not associated with the battle itself. But I think you're going to perhaps recognize some of the places or maybe even some of the people in these photographs. The photographs were taken when I was in headquarters battery, which is just across the road from A battery. And you're going to see the hooch area of headquarters battery, the mess hall that we all ate in, A battery and headquarters. You're going to see bunker 8. That was hit pretty bad that night. You're going to see a lot of the different buildings there. You're going to see across the road to the big guns at A battery. You're going to see a little walk down perimeter road all the way down towards the tower that you're going to hear talked about on the tape. All the way over to Frenchie's Pool. We've got a few pictures of that and also some of the people from the town of Anlock. To those of us who were in Quan Loy the night of May 12, 1969, it's certainly a night that we'll never forget.
What was it, anything?
By the airstrip. Over this way. Either be over here watching this way or be over here
Let me see
watching.
my flashlight. Let me go down here and look around. Who is?
There's somebody out there somewhere, man. I hate for him to come and try to get out and come across this way.
The reason this tape, there's nobody talking now, is because there's supposed to be gooks in the wire here somewhere in the compound. So everybody's on 100% alert here. I'm just outside our bunker, just watching around the area, watching over the airstrip. Two of the other guys here with me are just walking around, looking around the admin area. Made a direct hit with a rocket on the 175 howitzer, but nobody was hurt as far as I know. Gotten buku rockets and mortars hitting all over this compound tonight, so I imagine somebody was hurt. Knocked out the big tower down the perimeter. So all in all, it's about 2 o'clock at night. You couldn't believe the helicopters, and there goes a minigun. The helicopter's firing. Here they go again. Looks like daylight out here. It's about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I hope I don't see any gooks. Although they've been spotted in the area here. So I haven't been able to really say much on tape. So this is how it is over here. It's nice. No, really, this is unusual. Doesn't happen but once in a while. Especially this is the worst that I've ever seen it. Just tonight. Spookiest. It's just... Well, as far as wars go, it ain't bad. Here go there's more guns. They were pretty far away. All that noise there was a helicopter's miniguns, probably a Cobra. It was a Cobra. They're just flying all over. There's about 20 of the damn things up in the air now. Flares all over the place. That's right in the damn airstrip where they're shooting now. Choppers are just crawling along the airstrip real low, just checking it out. Should really be something for a camera. Take pictures of the war. So if this keeps up and I don't get stationed in Long Bend, don't worry about me extending. There ain't no way.
The late Larry Jameson with Alpha Battery remembered May 12th in a story he posted on quanloy.org. The night of May 11th, 1969 was much like any other night in Quan Loy. As I remember, it seemed to be rather quiet, with no firing missions being called. We had heard rumors that Charlie was near our perimeter. In fact, during the weeks before that night, the 2 8-inch guns had been firing point blank, or should I say straight at the perimeter. Air Force jets had dropped napalm around the perimeter, so close that we could feel the heat from the explosions. These were not good signs. Our location was on the west side of the Quan Loi Base Camp. A battery's position was protected by concertina wire and various guard bunkers. At 1:30 a.m. on the morning of May 12, 1969, my life changed forever. Rockets and mortars came in from everywhere. That night, tripwires went off on the perimeter, and we knew we were in for a ground probe of our position. I, along with another soldier, was sent to the small guard bunker atop the Projo bunker in gun section number 4. I remember seeing movement near the wire. At first I thought they were Americans from the mortar platoon. When we realized they were North Vietnamese, we opened fire with our M14s. They had a flamethrower and used it to set the gun pad on fire. I remember seeing one of the NVA aim a rocket-propelled grenade at us. He wore khakis and had a beekeeper-type hat on. I can still see him aiming that thing at us as we fired at them. The next thing I remember is hearing the explosion and being on the ground about 20 feet from where I had been. I crawled into the closest ditch. I remember looking at my arm and seeing blood running down my hand. I noticed my pants leg had been shredded. Blood was running into my boots. There is nothing more frightening than seeing your own blood flowing. One of the guys helped me to the aid station, I think in Headquarters Battery, but I can't be sure. The medic there cut off my shirt and pants. He told me that I was lucky and not hurt very badly. He gave me an IV and hauled me in the back of a truck to the 1st Cav medical aid station in the chopper area near the airstrip. I was examined by another medic who assigned my stretcher to a side area. I watched the soldier on the stretcher next to me die. He did not seem to be in pain. He was covered in shrapnel. He just seemed to go to sleep. As the chopper rose up in the air, I started laughing. The machine gunner looked at me. I yelled, "I'm never coming back here." He pointed toward the ground down into the jungle. We could see what looked to be hundreds of lights flickering. Charlie was making his getaway. It was almost daylight when the chopper set down at the hospital in Saigon. The doctor removed the shrapnel from my body that morning and told me that I would probably return to my unit in a few weeks. I still have shrapnel that occasionally works its way through my skin. Anyone old enough to remember May 1969 will recall a battle called Hamburger Hill. So many soldiers arrived in the hospital that day, there were no beds to put them in. We were put on stretchers on the ground in the courtyard. My $1 million wounds began to pay off. Medical flights to Japan on C-141 transport planes started flying out of Tonsanut. I flew to Japan on a stretcher, wounds bandaged but not stitched up, wrapped like a mummy but still laughing. They did not stitch your wounds for fear of infection. Vietnam was one of the filthiest places on earth. My freedom bird was flying out of there, and I knew that I would never return. Over the next month, incoming mortars and rocket rounds increased on Quan Loi Base Camp. I can't say that everyone was tense or worried, but there was something in the air that made the troopers a little worried that we all knew we were due for another ground attack. That attack came on the night of June 5th. Roger Mallory with Headquarters Battery, located at Quan Loy, was there that night. Here is some of what he remembers of that night. At almost the same instant, I heard someone calling for the medic. Not long after that, I saw someone moving behind the mess hall. With the light of flares, I could see it was one of our guys, and I asked, "Who got zapped?" His answer took me by surprise. "Brubaker," he yelled back. I thought he would say someone got some shrapnel or some other minor injury. No one of our comrades had been killed. This was for real. Later, I talked to B-Son. I don't recall his given name, and he told me that an RPG had hit the chain link fence and went off like it was supposed to. But a piece of shrapnel had caught Brubaker in the head. He said that he had just bent down to get some belt for the M60 when it happened. The number of enemy killed numbered 17, but this time we lost very few men. Headquarters Battery, however, lost a good friend that night in Robert Brubaker's death. After about a week or so, one of the Chu Hois, VC or NVA, who surrendered under the Chu Hoi program, gave a demonstration of how sappers do what they do. It was very interesting to watch, but it was also chilling to see and realize how easy it was for him to get through the wire. I never felt really secure in Quan Loy or anywhere else in Vietnam again. Michael Comerford, also known as Rex Hart with Alpha Battery, remembered the June 5th attack. After the attack on May 12, 1969, the guard bunker on top of gun number 4's Projo bunker had been reinforced. A chain-link RPG fence was placed in front of it, and the area where the mortar platoon had been hit was bulldozed, giving number 4 a more clear firing zone in the event of a ground attack. I was on guard duty in that bunker the night of June 5, 1969, with Jan McClaga from number 4 gun section. Rain clouds hovered above as light rain began to fall slowly down. We put on our ponchos. It was so dark we couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of us, and the sound of the falling rain made it nearly impossible to hear. It must have been around midnight when a trip flare went off and rockets started landing. Shortly, all hell broke loose. Somebody popped a flare, and I remember McClaga saying, "My God, look at all of them. They're like ants." Almost immediately, Jim Moore from number 4 came up the ladder to help. We cranked the 50 cal up and fired a burst. I was on the left side, McClogga in the middle feeding, and Moore was guarding our open side by the ladder. So if anyone got through, he could pick them off before they could blindside us. I had remembered hearing on May 12th that the machine gun had jammed, so I kept thinking to fire bursts and pause so the barrel wouldn't overheat and force us to change barrels. We had an extra barrel up there with us as well as an asbestos glove, but I knew when changing barrels, if you didn't put it back in exactly the same way, the gun had to be retimed, which could have been critical. Every time I paused, Sergeant Huff, Number 4's crew chief, would yell up to us asking what was wrong. He would yell at us. I would yell back down everything was okay and fire for a while. Every 30 seconds, it seemed our RPG screen would save us. I was absolutely amazed how well it worked. They kept firing RPGs, but nothing got through the screen. There were aiming sticks jutting up out of the sandbags, and though I had a very wide range of motion with the 50 caliber, I tried to be careful to stay between the sticks for fear of hitting one of the other bunkers. I had fired 50s in training, but not to that extent, and I remember the machine gun almost jumping up as it barked like an angry dog, trying to get to the enemy. As morning approached, I remember telling McClogga that I had never been so tired in my life. At dawn, we saw the destruction in front of us. One of the infantry guys in the bunker just forward and to the side of us had been killed, and sadly, we heard Michael Brubaker in the bunker on the other side had also lost his life to an RPG. I didn't know him personally, but I have thought about him many times over the years. I will never forget how cool both McClogga and Moore were the whole time we were under attack. The men of Number 4 gun section gave a great account of themselves, and after that I felt much safer every night when I lay down to sleep knowing those guys on Number 4 were on the perimeter of our battery between me and the enemy. The rest of June and all of July was pretty quiet, except for regular incoming rounds of mortars and rockets. There was a reason why Quan Loy had the nickname Rocket City. Meanwhile, new replacements arrived and short-timers left for home. Temperatures were in the high 80s with lows at night in the high 70s. Each day was sunny, and if you arrived at Quan Loy during this time, you might think that it was not too bad a place to be stationed, except for the incoming. The NVA VC had other plans for Quan Loy, though, as they moved down through Cambodia along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Captured enemy in Chuhois told of a large buildup of troops with plans to attack An-Loc, Quan Loy, and Loc Ninh as well. The average trooper at Quan Loy had little knowledge of these reports, but old-timers sensed that we were due for another ground attack.
What follows are some excerpts of a U.S. Army after-action report concerning the August 12th attack. Quan Loy, the base itself sprawls over the crest of a large flat-topped hill some 3 kilometers long and 1.5 kilometers wide, or 4.83 miles by 2.41 miles, and this occupies some fairly good defensive terrain. The drawback, however, is that it is perhaps too big. A drive around the inside perimeter wire will take roughly 9 kilometers or 14.5 miles, and without holding an excessive number of ground troops back to defend it, available resources are going to be spread pretty thin covering the 82 bunkers and 9 towers that comprise the perimeter. A rifle company, for example, manning a firebase, will normally have anywhere from 14 to 18 bunkers to cover, but the company that is assigned the mission of defending the green sector at Andy finds itself responsible for 30. If one man in a 3-man bunker should be wounded, one of the other 2 may have to take care of him, leaving only one man actually firing. The night of August 12, 1969 was an unusually dark one. The moon was almost in its new moon phase, and the sky was overcast. The troops manning the bunkers could barely make out the first strand of concertina only 20 yards from them, and their starlight scopes did not even have enough light to be any help. Raymond Friston of B Company 1st of the 8th Cav remembered it, as after about 10 o'clock that we started hearing noises, like somebody moving out in front of our bunker. Lieutenant Gary Farrington, Blues Sector Commander, would call in an illumination round, but we wouldn't see nothin'. Man, I knew those gooks were out there, but you just can't shoot at something when you can't see it. Everybody'll think you are just nervous. Lieutenant Farrington, too, was nervous. He ordered his troops to fire some M79 rounds in the direction of the sounds, and they seemed to stop for a while. He had been told that there was a good chance that Quan Loy would be hit that night, but they had cried "Wolf" so many times before, it kind of lost its effect. Things quieted down after midnight, and the troops in the blue sector began to wonder if they had really heard anything or not. Lieutenant Farrington began making his rounds at 0100, driving along the road in his jeep, and getting out to talk to the guards in the bunkers. He had reached Bunker 19 when the artillery positions behind his bunker started taking incoming. At the same time a trip flare went off inside the wire in front of Bunker 15, and a half-naked enemy sapper was outlined. All the bunkers opened fire almost instantly. I couldn't see nothing, reports Friston, still on Bunker 18, but when that trip flare went off I just started shooting. On the southeast side of the perimeter, in the meantime, fighting had also broken out at Bunker 61 in the green sector, which was being manned by B Company 1st of the 7th Cav. Fighting action took place on both southwest and southeast perimeters that night. It was beginning to get light when the tanks reached Bunker 18 on the west perimeter. Lieutenant Farrington linked up with 2nd Lieutenant Robert E. Walters, the RFB commander, and placed the troops from this force in bunkers 11 through 14. The attack on Quan Loy had not been a successful one for the enemy. It was later discovered that he had deployed 3 companies of the 4th Battalion, J-16 Sapper Regiment against LZ Andy.
Attack on the U.S. Air Base at Da Nang kills 8 Americans, wounds 173, and destroys 11 aircraft. The main runway, 4 barracks, and an ammunition dump were all hit. The 10-minute rocket barrage set off secondary blasts from bombs and fuel. The barracks, each housing about 150 airmen, were completely leveled. The rockets were fired from nearby mountains and landed with pinpoint accuracy and perfect coordination. The The base mess hall took a direct hit, and flames lit up the night sky. The attacks were in retaliation for recent air raids launched from Da Nang, which hit close to Haiphong and Hanoi. Next morning, the damage is more fully surveyed. 140mm rockets leave huge craters. The two-story buildings are reduced to rubble. Da Nang is headquarters for all marine operations in Vietnam. The property damage loss is considerable, especially among the aircraft. Despite the rocket pounding, which ended when American artillery zeroed in, military officials said the base is only temporarily affected.
Seven U.S. troops lost their lives that night, but normally on a sapper attack of that size, the enemy would hope to kill many more Americans and do considerably more damage than they managed to accomplish on this attack, but the enemy was unable to place his satchel charges on anything of value, and he actually failed to make even a significant penetration. The report continues. It is even less clear why they hit over by Bunker 16, but we artillerymen know what they were aiming for, to put as many of our 175mm guns and 8-inch howitzers as possible out of action. They did achieve damaging only one of our 175mm guns with a flamethrower before being killed. A Cobra gunship was hit on the runway and the pilot was killed, and a Huey helicopter, parked near the runway, was destroyed.
For the next week, the August 12th attack was a continual topic of conversation among the troops. Knowledge of the 7 reported U.S. deaths and the 55 enemy deaths, with 4 of them captured, was talked about again and again. For many GIs, the reality of war and the chance of being killed or wounded weighed on their minds. Those men assigned to the perimeter guard duty stayed awake and alert through the night. In May 2006, Paul Grandy sent me some information regarding events on August 19, 1969. One piece of this information was a posting on an online bulletin board to Paul by Lieutenant Gary Farrington regarding that August night. Farrington also eventually wrote a book about his Vietnam service called Killing for Peace, in which he described the incident in detail. It is available on Amazon.com as a Kindle edition.
I will read you that bulletin board post which describes the sad incident that occurred on August 19, 1969. Here's an account by Gary Farrington about that incident. Paul, straight story on the Sheridan incident. Because we had almost got our butts handed to us the week before, on August 12th. I had many more guys to spread out on the bunkers in our sector, so each bunker had about 8 or so guys manning it instead of the 3 or 4 I had on August 12th when we fought all night in front of the 175 battery that was above the bunker line. A lot of guys were cooks, clerks, and assorted enlisted men. On the bunker that got wiped out, there were 4 of our guys from D Company with 4 or 5 guys from the laundry facility. The tower got skittish. Guys started throwing rounds at the wire and the Sheridan tank, which was up the hill to be ready to react to contact. It fired up and started to rumble down the slope to what the tank commander perceived as the point of contact. At this point, almost all of the guys on that bunker were standing up on the bunker or kneeling in the firing position. I had yet to notice any incoming fire, but people were obviously nervous as hell and were shooting it up big time. I started to run down the slope toward the bunker, feeling the presence of the Sheridan as it rumbled down the slope toward the tower in the bunker. I was close enough to the bunker to see the individuals on it get swept off their feet in a horrendous yellow-orange flash. I got knocked down by the concussion of the blast. The Sheridan was directly on my left, and I was just a little in front of it when the round went off. I think the track hit a rut, which pulled the Sheridan to the right, bringing the 152mm tube to bear directly on the bunker from less than 30 yards. The gunner apparently had his safety off, anticipating pulling in between the tower and the bunker in a matter of seconds. But when the track hit the rut and lurched to the right, the gunner pitched forward and touched off a beehive round past my head and right into the guys on the bunker. They were cut down like stalks of wheat. The Sheridan kept rolling to its intended firing position and threw off a few more rounds. Still no incoming that I could make out. I got up and ran to the bunker pretty shocked by what I'd seen. I crawled around in the darkness, checking the bodies for signs of life. There were nails sticking out of all of them, hundreds of them, but one kid was still breathing and moaning. I picked him up and started back up the hill. All the time, I was yelling for somebody to get their ass down that hill to the bunker to help. Finally, a couple of guys from the QRF in the command post tent came down and took the guy I was carrying and tried to get him to the medics. He died before they could do anything for him. I went back to the bunker and stayed there with the dead, popping off a few rounds out of frustration, even though I knew there was nobody out there. We had done it to ourselves. I waited until sunrise, sitting in the dirt, by that time the dead, and been packed off to graves registration. A very shocked medic asked me if the other side used flechettes. I said no. Major Blake, Duke 5, came down to see what had happened. I told him what I had seen in bitter detail. A spit-shine slick sat down at about 0700, and some senior officers jumped out to get a briefing on the attack. It was all BS. I decided my time in the Army was about over. Screw the career. I wasn't going for the lie. I pulled myself out of the dirt to confront the lie just in time to see Major Blake pull the general aside and tell him the truth. He then walked to the bunker and pulled up the tarp that draped the left side. There were hundreds of flechettes embedded in the side of the bunker, and the angle of entry was from inside our perimeter, not from the green line. Major Blake then pointed at me and said, "Farrington was here for the whole thing." The general asked me if it was true. I said yes, it was. He muttered, "We can't be killing our own people," or something like that, and said he was glad to know the truth. A week later, there was a small blurb in Stars and Stripes about a friendly fire incident. By then, I was on my way to Benoit to Diros and contemplate the end of my time as a citizen soldier. The Sheridan crew got shipped out of Quan Loy that morning. They had saved us the week before when the bunkers were overrun, and the kid who touched off the round was devastated when he heard what he had done. If I close my eyes, I can still see the guys getting cut down on the bunker. It is almost like a photographic negative. On a lighter note, I've always been glad that I wasn't a faster runner. 5 more yards, and I'd have been in the cone of that orange blast. There it is, the Sheridan story. I always thought that the majority of the guys on that bunker were not combat troops, but support guys who came out to pull bunker duty in anticipation of a night of turkey shooting if we caught an attack. I do know that the laundry crew was pretty much wiped out. If anybody has questions about any of the details, I'll be glad to help where I can. Best regards, Gary. Wednesday, May 2006, 11:41 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Lionel Nash was assigned to guard duty the night of August 19, 1969. His assignment that night was to be one of the 3 tower guards on the west perimeter. Lionel climbed the ladder to the tower located adjacent to bunker number 18. At my request, he wrote and forwarded to me this memory of that night. As you will hear, it is the memory of this night which still haunts him to this day.
On August 19, 1969, a tragic event occurred on the Green Line in Quan Loy that resulted in the loss of life. The events of that day will always be with me. The night of the tragedy started out like any other night when you are on guard duty. I was assigned to the tower west of Alpha Battery on the Green Line at Quan Loy. I had checked my equipment that included my weapon, ammo, and the tower's communication equipment, one radio and a landline. I made a communication check with the Green Line command post and received an all clear. After taking one of the early guard watches in the tower, I went to sleep. Sometime later that night I was awakened by the sound of gunfire and explosions. I jumped up and began checking the ground-wired area out in front and both sides of the tower for any enemy incursion. During my scan of the area, I was using both binoculars and the starlight scope. I did not see anyone in the wire. As I continued to scan the area, the communication radio came alive with people talking, asking questions and giving reports. In the chaos on the radio, I heard someone reporting that Bunker 18 had been overtaken by the VC. Bunker 18 was the first bunker west of the tower that I was in. I used both the starlight and binoculars to look at Bunker 18 and saw that our own troops were still in control of the bunker. I attempted numerous times to contact the CP both by radio and landline to advise them that Bunker 18 was not overrun and our troops were still there. With all of the madness and overtalk on the radio and landline, I never received a reply or acknowledgement of my message. During my attempts to contact the CP, I could hear and see a tank rapidly approaching Bunker 18. The tank then stopped in front of the bunker. I saw the tank's barrel turning towards the bunker and then fire. To this day, I still feel the anger and sorrow of not getting through to the command post to stop the accidental firing on our own troops. Later that day, I was told by First Sergeant Jefferson that someone would be coming to interview me about what had happened, but no one ever did. It still pains me that I was a witness to our own troops being killed by friendly fire. Thanks for allowing me to tell what I saw that night. Lionel Nash.
9 men had been riddled with flechettes. Most were killed instantly as their bodies were torn apart. 4 men were severely wounded, but there is no record if any of them survived in the end. A sad mistake, or an overeager tank gunner, or simply just an accident. There is no one to blame for this friendly fire incident. In the fog of battle, the tank gunner arriving in the Sheridan tank had his finger on the trigger, and the tank hit a rut, and the gunner accidentally fired the beehive round at the bunker, killing 9 GIs. A sad story for sure. It's been many years now that I have known this sad story, but I could not find a way to tell it until now. It has bothered me all these years that these 9 men were wasted fighting an unwinnable war, just in George Orwell's 1984, where Oceania, East Asia, and Eurasia change sides periodically. Vietnam is now one of our largest trading partners, and we are fighting other enemies. The time has come to honor the memory of each of these 9 men. Here are the 9 men who lost their lives on the 19th of August, 1969. I have gathered as much available information from the internet possible. I did not want to try to contact their families, as frankly, it's been almost 56 years since their death. Let us now just honor their memory.